What's up, everybody? It's your boy Paper Chase back live at Diamond Owl Studios. Today I'm accompanied with my friend.
The one and only Diamond Don Wannabe. What are we doing today, Chase?
Dude, I think we're actually going to get into some really stuff that I kind of enjoy. I know I shouldn't enjoy it, but I love watching like serial killer interviews and documentaries and stuff like that. You're familiar with Ed Kemper, right?
I literally brought him up and suggested that we watch it.
But I didn't.
He's like trying to do a YouTube intro. You're familiar with him? Sure, buddy. No, I'm not. Who is this guy?
Okay, well, this guy is a twisted, sick individual.
Ed Kemper, first time reaction.
Do you know a little bit about like what he did though? Like I know some about him, but I like off the top of my head, I can't remember like the name of his first victim. He wasn't a cannibal, right?
No, but I don't even know if I can say it. Like what he did. Like, so, I mean, I might have to tell you once we stop this recording.
Okay.
I'm curious what he.
I do remember he did some grape on.
Yeah.
Unalive stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember this guy.
Yeah.
He's absolutely disgusting. But I do remember hearing. I've never watched one of his actual interviews, but I remember hearing like he was actually like he seemed super friendly in like interviews, and people were like kind of thrown off, like all the disgusting crazy shit. Okay, I don't want to say too much, but didn't he like want to be arrested because he knew if he wasn't that he would just keep doing this over and over and over?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I know him mainly from the show Mindhunter that was on Netflix.
Same.
So that's kind of where I saw it. And then I remember looking it up because I was like, how true is this to like real life? And then I saw some of the interviews and the guy that played him, and they did like a really good job. Like, throughout that series, the people that they picked as the actors like closely resembled them. I mean, they did just a great job of like, mimicking the actual, the casting and the actors that they had play the roles were fantastic. And I think the stories held pretty true because it is based off of a true story. I mean, there's a book about it. There's a FBI agent who actually wrote a book that was talking about, them being the ones that started the whole, what is it, like criminal psychology, basically?
Yeah. And diving into the psyche of serial killers, why they do it, what their urges are, things like that. Yeah, which is pretty insane that was kind of like what's the word? Like there was so much pushback. Like when they wanted to do it, there was so much pushback from the government. Like they were wasting money, but it's like, this is very important research.
Well, at the time, nobody had done anything like that. So it was totally just like woo almost, psychology, you got to think that was like, I think probably, was it the 60s, 70s when this was happening? And so at that time it was like, you didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't talk about mental stuff. You just shoved it down deep in a hole and filled yourself full of whiskey. That's how you dealt with it.
Like that there were
that you would get into people's minds.
Yeah, and the thought that there was actually people out there who were like addicted to like murdering people. Like they had like it made them. That's what completed them, made them feel alive or whatever it is. I don't know how those dudes think, but yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that.
That's why I like watching these type of things, because in some twisted way, there's like some sort of dark like fascination with how does somebody come out like this?
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. That's why I like watching these true crime, like serial killer things, is because it's like, what could turn a human being into a monster?
Exactly.
Are they born that way? Is it through, life experiences and like so I went through a whole phase of like listening to all these true crime podcasts.
Same.
There's the big one that I first like tapped into is like My Favorite Murder, I think it is.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that one?
No.
So it's like two female comedians, and they're actually really funny. And they like just do a podcast on murder, and it's like, if you can make serial killing funny, they actually do that.
Yeah.
And they were one of the first ones that I remember, hearing about that was big. They were actually going on tour and doing like live shows.
There's another one with two big girls. I mean, they're not comedians. You
mean Two Big Girls?
I mean, no, I'm not referencing to their size, just their popularity. But I mean, my ex used to listen to it, and I was like, man, this stuff's stupid. And then one day she like played one on a road trip, and I was like, so invested. She was like, I need to pull over to pee. I was like, wait, can you wait till we just figure out who the killer was, you know? But yeah, man, let's get into this, dude. I'm excited.
All right, which one are we doing? This 20-minute one?
Let's do the 20-minute one because I'm sure
what
there's
has the most views. We got 1.6 million. Let me bring this up. Are we going to do small screen? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
So we can just stare deeply into this creepy guy's eyes.
Exactly.
All right. So we got Ed Kemper interview 84. 9 years ago, 2.5, the extended version. That's an hour.
I feel like we should do the top one, the
27-minute one. Okay.
I feel like that one would be good.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35. It isn't that impossible in this society. It happens.
Are there more people?
They didn't give up.
How many?
She didn't give up. I did. I came in out of the cold. And what I'm saying is...
So I think you're right, because it sounds like, you know, he's alluding to the fact that he gave up and turned himself in or something.
Yeah,
I just don't remember this story, to be honest.
I think this.
Couple years.
I think there's a quote from him, like, not obviously I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like, if I didn't turn myself in or, you know, get arrested, I would just keep doing this forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that shows some sort of remorse of being like, or you know, just wanting to stop himself because he realizes how like heinous it is, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I remember. And I think that's why his interviews are so fascinating, because opposed to being like this crazy psycho, he's kind of like, he seems relatable in a way. I don't know if that's the right word. Not relatable, but like people
You
can
said it.
People can listen to him and kind of like, and I know it's fucked up, but like almost like feel
empathize.
like feel like he's your friend talking to you. You know, like,
I'm just gonna hand you a shovel because
get out of here, man.
You're digging. You're relatable. You're a friend. Nah, dog. I'm not.
But that's the truth, man.
I'm not relating to him.
Because I mean, if I remember, frankly, too, like this guy, I don't remember if it was him, but I think so. He like was friends with like the police in his town. Like everybody like thought he was just this super friendly, like nice guy. And then when it came out that he was doing all this shit, it was like, whoa, you know.
There are some people who prefer it in the cold.
What did people see?
A nice guy.
Did you like Kemper?
I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life, other life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further? I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding these rages got. I was raging inside. There was just incredible energies, positive and negative.
Is that why you identify with them?
No, I don't identify with him. I never said that. I said it's
because you've got some.
He just seems like somebody that like you could have a normal conversation with honestly without being scared. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what's so horrifying about these things is that it's, you know, the neighbor. I mean, that's like Ted Bundy. I just heard something about him the other day, and this woman, I think she wrote a book about it, but she said that she worked with him at like a grape crisis center.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for years, gave him a ride home. It's totally friendly, liked him. So it's like this person that could just be sitting right next to you right now, having a little sip off of an upslope and smoking a vape, and you're living a quiet life.
No, but the thing about it too, I mean, you even look at like Charles Manson, like he formulated a whole cult of people
that's a whole different story. We should get into that because I actually know a ton about that.
Okay, well we'll save that for another time.
And I'm just gonna zip it.
Basically, just saying that like he was like what's the word? Enigmatic. You know, like people wanted to be around him, talk
Yeah,
to
charismatic.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I mean, that's the crazy thing. We do some music reactions, and we're yapping, so we'll get back to this. But he was involved with some of the Beach Boys. I don't know if you know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Depending on a mood, that would trigger one or the other. And outside, I looked troubled at times. Other times I looked moody. Other times perfectly serene. Not very sane. But again, people weren't even aware of what was happening.
In 1972 and 1973, a series of murders shocked Northern California. College girls began to disappear while hitchhiking. 2 of the victims were picked up from the campus of the University of California at Santa Cruz. That's where Ed Kemper's mother was working as an administrative assistant.
You were involved in the campus because your mother worked there.
Yes. I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds, women, and had had a very strong and violently outspoken position on men for much of my upbringing. My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother. And I watched the alcohol increase. I watched her social life drop off. I watched her get bizarre. She had terrible pain from her life, earlier life, her upbringing, a failed marriage with my father. I'm a constant reminder of that failure. I hate to distill it down into such, into one-word realities like that. There's a lot that leads into that happening, but that is what happened. They represented not what my mother was, but what she liked, what she coveted, what was important to her, and I was destroying it.
Why did you actually kill the girls?
My frustration, my inability to communicate socially, sexually. I wasn't impotent, but emotionally I was impotent. I was scared to death.
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, I was just kind of busting your balls earlier about identifying with them, but he is very like well-spoken, and clearly like introspective. That's what's so terrifying, because it's like he understands like what caused him to be what he was, you know, what his issues were with the anger. I mean, he even says it, that I felt, you know, frustrated, you know, and that he wasn't able to speak to women. And so he understands like all the psychology of what created him to be who he is, and yet still didn't have control. That's what I do remember about him is his relationship with his mother, that she was constantly demeaning him. And like, as an alcoholic, I think she was like beating him, but more like the mental type of, abuse that she put him through, of like constantly demeaning him, comparing him to his father, so that as, you know, a boy, he always felt like dirty and wrong and bad, and that, you know, men were bad, and that he was a projection of his father, and that all of that just like led to this anger and like self-hatred of himself, and then also of his mother, and then women. I mean, it's crazy,
you know, because you hear about, you know, a lot of people, you know, getting off because they plead insanity, they go through other trials and stuff, but he clearly knew what he was doing. Like, that's wild to me. That's what I feel like, that's what turns, you know, somebody who kills somebody maybe in the moment or something like that. That's the difference between them and a serial killer. A serial killer knows what they're doing. They're going to do it again. They're not going to stop. It's pretty wild.
Death of failing in male-female relationships. I knew absolutely nothing about that whole area. Even if just sitting down and talking with the young lady. I need to be able to really communicate, and ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up. And I'm picking up young women, and I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides. This fantastic passion It was overwhelming me. It was like drugs. It was like alcohol. A little isn't enough. At first it is. And as you adjust to that psychologically and physically, you take more and more and more. It's the same process. So it finally came down to the thing of, do I dare bring this gun out? Already realizing if that gun comes out, something has to happen. It was going to happen. I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun that got us all.
On one occasion, Kemper picked up 2 roommates in Berkeley.
In that first killing in May of '72, when that gun was pulled out, I launched it out. I had it under my leg, out of sight, parallel to my leg in the seat. It was something that had been thought out in fantasy, acted out, felt out hundreds of times before it ever happened.
Yeah, that's one thing that, like, I had read the actual book Mindhunter, and other books that I've kind of read about this type of stuff, podcasts. It's one of the things that they say is that people like this will go through this like fantasy stage of planning it out in their mind, and he talks about like having these ideas. It's crazy to think about too that there was a time when people just hitchhike, and girls would just get in a stranger's car. It was just like normal that people would be, my dad told me about like hitchhiking across the country with my mom and, them hitchhiking. My mom was telling me about hitchhiking when she was like a teenager out to California.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think about like how much society has changed.
Have you ever hitchhiked?
Yeah. When I was younger, I think I did. Yeah, I'm of a generation that was before like cell phones. And so things like that were more like normal because it's like you couldn't just call people. So people were more like, inclined to like help you. They'd see somebody. And so, yeah, when I was a kid, I hitchhiked, and then also we would pick up hitchhikers. It was still kind of a thing when I was, growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Gotcha.
Happened.
Kemper drove them at gunpoint to a secluded area near a park. He took one of them into the woods, leaving...
Why are you possibly laughing when we're about to hear about 2 women getting murdered?
Because, bro, one time I was thinking about this.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. I was coming home from a bar. I was drunk as hell. And I was hitchhiking because it was cold as hell. I was just like, let me just see if I can, throw a thumb out there, wave somebody down. It's, snowing. Dude, I get in the car and I'm like drunk. So I'm just like kind of like, tipsy. And the dude that I was with started grabbing on my leg and started like feeling me up. And I'm like, yo, stop. And he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's not why I asked you to pick me up. 2 seconds later, he goes right back at it.
Oh, he was just, Have you seen Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
It's been a minute.
Where that's the rules of the road, dude. If you're a hitchhiker, you gotta,
yeah. Man, I forgot the cardinal rule of the road. Had to, help him out a little bit.
God.
The second girl tied in the car.
I just gone through a horrible experience with her roommate stabbing her. And I was in shock because of that. I couldn't believe that it was that way. And I'm walking back there bewildered. I gotta kill her. I can't let her go. She's gonna tell on me. Everybody's gonna get me. She sees the blood on my hands. What are you doing? And she pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot, but I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her. I said, your friend got smart with me and I hit her. I think I broke her nose. You better come help. She's about to die. Why does she have to know that? I couldn't deal with telling her that. And when I attacked her, she didn't at first realize what was happening. It didn't go through. She had very heavy coveralls on. It knocked her right up into the lid of the car, but it didn't pierce the clothing. So it wasn't that swell a knife anyway. I went out and bought a pawn shop huge knife. And I kept on just mindlessly attacking. She falls back into the trunk. I just killed a young woman. I slammed down the lid of the trunk. She isn't dead, she's dying. And I panicked. I thought, I just locked the car keys in it because I can't find them in my pocket.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, I locked them in the trunk. I'm kicking on the trunk lid and yanking on it. Oh no, I don't believe this. I started to run and I tripped over the gun that I'd had in my pants that I had totally forgotten was there. I stopped. I said, stop and think. I collected my wits. Check all your pockets. I picked the gun up. I stuck it back in my pants, now remembering I had one. I checked all my pockets, and there's the keys in the back pocket. I never put them in my back pocket.
Everyone makes mistakes, and that's what we have to hope for. The more mistakes they make, the better their chances.
I thought I was pretty slick, and went and tripped all over myself. That first 2 murders, the first 24 hours, there were 3 clear times I should have been busted, and I wasn't. Because 3 different individuals or 3 different groups of people got scared and minded their own business and looked the other way.
Some of the people who are committing...
That's crazy. That is mind-blowing. And that happens all the time. Like, you see random stuff going down on the street and people will just turn the other way, you know, whether it be in viral videos where people are just recording and letting people just, you know, wild out.
There was a study, or there was an incident in New York, I think, where a woman was being attacked, and they said as many as 40 or 50 bystanders walked by and didn't do anything. So it was this huge like case, I think in the 70s or 80s. And, you know, people used it as like this example of like how messed up society was, and, you know, how things were going downhill. And then, you know, people like psychologists like that actually looked into it, and they started interviewing people because they were wondering, like, how could somebody just like walk by? Mm. And there's a common thought amongst people that like, oh, somebody else must have already called the police or must be dealing with this already. Mm-hmm. So that's just like a common psychological thing.
And
that
just
happens.
Fear. Like,
yes.
So many people
that
pussy,
is part
bro.
of it,
like,
but this is part of it. But specifically in this incident, they were saying, oh, since there was so many people that were around to witness it, everybody just assumed like, oh, they already like called the police.
Yeah. But that's one of those things when it comes down to that too, when you're interviewing people who clearly didn't do anything and should have done something, and they say things like that. It's like, well, they're probably just too afraid to admit like, hey, I'm a big old pussy and I don't want to.
I mean, there was like old ladies because it was like around an apartment complex.
Yeah.
So it was more of just like a situation where, you know, it just people assume that somebody else was going to handle it. I think there are a lot of people that are afraid or not willing to take charge, but it is terrifying to think that, you know, that something like that could happen. And, you know, people just, you know,
I mean, and granted, you know, like me and like, I know you and you know me, if we saw a girl getting hurt or something, we would step in, obviously.
You know, you say that though, but I've done that. And, you know, here's the truth. Like, I have interjected and had a woman literally like start trying to swing on me.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
but still, that's what you have to do.
Because her boyfriend,
like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, there are scenarios. Like, literally, this guy was like, yeah, anyways, the point is,
I mean, but that's still what you have to do regardless.
Yes, you have to.
And like, but if we saw a couple guys fighting, like, I'm not stepping in.
Yeah.
Handle it, bro. Like, you know, like, I mean, obviously if you see like 5 guys jumping one person.
Even then though,
I mean,
it's like if you jump in, you could be the center of, you know, you could become the target as well. I mean, it is kind of a scary thing because you could get just like brought into the mix, but.
Murders, even as we speak, if they're doing it by themselves and they tell no one about it, they could go on undetected until they decided to stop. And the police wouldn't catch them unless we just happened to roll up on them while they were doing it.
Even after police warnings against hitchhiking and an increased bus schedule on the campus, Kemper had no trouble picking up hitchhikers. Ironically, one warning advised riding only in cars with university stickers. Kemper's car had such a sticker.
My mother worked at the campus, and I had an A sticker on my car, and obvious access day or night to the campus. I was picking up some very lovely young women. You know what we were talking about as we're driving around? Almost as often as not, this guy that's going around doing this stuff. And the second they started talking that, they didn't realize it, but they were getting a free ride. I couldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, I swear. You know, but they'd be telling me all about this guy, and they're comparing notes and speculating on what he looks like, how he carries himself, why he's doing this stuff, telling me about it.
So how come they get in a car with somebody at that time?
She judged me not to be that guy. I didn't look like it. It was getting easier to do. I was getting better at it.
It's crazy because if you think about that, it's like, you know, he's not a terrible looking guy. He's super tall. He says that he, you know, couldn't talk to women, but women felt comfortable enough to get into the car with them. So, you know, it's just kind of crazy that, you know, he had all this anger and says that he wasn't able to talk to women, but at the same time is able to.
He's super well spoken.
And lure them.
Literally,
into
they
his
know
vehicle.
that people are getting murdered from the same campus.
Exactly. And they're jumping in the ride with them. That's just insane. And then
wild.
talking to him about it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too how he said, like, once they were talking about it and he knows that, like, that's in the forefront of their mind, he's like, I'm not going to touch that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to even have anything involved with that because there could be certain precautions that they've already taken. They could have told people, like, you know, they're catching a ride. I mean, I know they don't have cell phones like back in the day, but there's
Or he just felt guilty.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. It's wild.
I was getting less detectable. I started flaunting that invisibility, severing a human head, 2 of them, at night in front of my mother's residence, with her at home, my neighbors at home upstairs, their picture window open, the curtains open, 11 o'clock at night, the lights are on. All they have to do is walk by, look out, and I've had it.
Why did you keep the heads? Why did you cut them off, and why did you keep them?
Something out of my childhood. I could put it on an incident. I mean, my father chopping the heads off of our 2 pet chickens and my mother insisting that I eat them for dinner. You know, we could say it was something that simple. I don't think it was. Now, my dad heads out back with a hatchet. I got on my bike and I tried to stop it. I remember that. I got on the bike, rode around the block. I was crying. I haven't talked about that for a lot of years. I'm sure that may have implemented something, that may have gotten something rolling, but along fantasy lines. But it took a lot of years of development along those lines to really get off.
But how are you able to, in 1 minute, have someone's head in your hand, and very shortly thereafter?
Living through a fantasy, however that would relate to that severed head. And then 5 minutes later, I'd put that away, and there'd be a knock on the door, and I'd put it away and answer the door, and the landlady would be there, and we'd discuss it.
Discuss what?
Reality. Her reality, not mine. Some people go crazy at that point. I felt it. It was one hell of a tweak. I mean, to just flip out and not know where I was. To be walking up the stairs with a camera bag that belonged to a young woman that had her severed head in it. Walking up to my apartment past a happy young couple coming down the stairs who nodded and smiled at me as they went by. Good evening. And they're going out on a date where I'd love to be going. And I'm aware of both of these realities, and the distance between those two is so dramatic, so amazing, so violent, that really, I could feel the wheels squeaking inside. That was really pulling on it. And I imagine at that point some people break. But I didn't literally go insane. I didn't get lost.
It is crazy how he explains these past events with, like, I don't know, he's so intellectual too. He's so, like, I mean, I don't mean to, like, gas him up or anything, but the way he's explaining it is like he is a very, very aware person. And
yeah, I can tell, or, you know, what am I looking to say? So for the FBI psychologist, like, I'm sure this was a gold mine because he was willing to actually talk about it. Because, like, Bundy wouldn't talk about his crimes. There was a bunch of stuff that he wouldn't say until actually he was, like, on death row and was about to be killed. And then he started opening up because he was hoping that they would, like, extend his sentence and allow him to tell more about his crimes and, you know, to say where bodies were. So he was looking basically to extend his life. But a lot of these serial killers won't do that, or they'll dance around it, or they'll play these games. But he is very introspective, and, you know, being able to relate it to an event and say, hey, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I had to cut the heads off my pet chickens. And I think that's where, so it had to be a gold mine for them. You know, the the interviewers and the FBI psychologists to be able to have somebody that's that aware. And God, is it disturbing to just, you know, I mean, just think about this conversation. He's like, what would you do with the heads? I mean, imagine sitting across from another human.
a guy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, this close. Like, I mean, they're across the table smaller than this, having this conversation. I mean,
I think what's the craziest part about it is
how
like
scary and creepy is that?
like sitting across from him and honestly, like probably not even feeling scared because he makes you feel so comfortable.
He does.
And what really blew my mind is when he was just giving across that imagery of like, you know, I'm walking up the stairs with a severed head in this girl's camera bag. And I'm walking next to a couple who's going on a date and realizing both realities, realizing how different those realities are, but he's able to access them, and how that was the most mind-blowing thing he said so far, because it just really shows how some people are just living like completely insanely different lives from what they're showing the outside world.
Yeah.
And just how far apart those worlds can be.
And how they can just project this image of like, and that goes for like people that are like scam artists and that, you know, project this image of being this trusted, like, you know, church going, upstanding citizen. But meanwhile, they're like, you know, running some sort of fraud. I mean, it is wild that people can have these like separate compartmentalized lives where they're like one person, you know, amongst this person, amongst these people, and then somebody that's totally different.
Random question. Like, do you think, I mean, maybe he'll answer this later on. Do you think like when, you know, when, for example, when he was walking up the stairs, seeing that couple with the head in his bag, do you think he felt like an intense anxiety from it? I mean, I know me, if I have a random small ass thing going on in my life and I'm trying to focus on something else, it kind of like eats at you. But it seems to him, he's like being able to compartmentalize these things and make them two separate.
Well, I think that's what he was talking about. Cause he said that, you know, that, you know, moment, I think it was super intense because he literally says, I think most people would have snapped. And I think that's what he's pointing at is that the pressure of that, of living these two separate lives was so intense that he was literally like on the brink of going insane.
But he was able to like, I don't know, keep them separate and
hold it together,
compartmentalize it. And like, you know, that's just crazy to me.
And all this time, Kemper was able to seem normal. He even hung out at a bar across the street from the courthouse, making friends with policemen, trying to pick up information.
They'd buy me a beer, I'd buy them a beer. Casual relationships, but I was poking around a little bit trying to find some things out. I knew they wouldn't be privy to hot information, but there were some things that were bothering me, like were there any speculations on how they were dying?
Did the cops like you?
Like I said, a friendly nuisance. I got in the way. And it was deliberate. Again, friendly nuisances are dismissed.
How did you get the knowledge to outsmart the police?
Watching television, believe it or not. Joseph Wambaugh, police story. Got some tremendous insights into not just the gimmicks, the actual things, the tidbits that you would pick up from their procedures, but the mechanics behind that, the logic behind it, was I would not allow myself to walk into even a potential trap of behavior. And one of those was talking about those crimes too much to people, initiating conversations about that.
There was a memorial service for two of the victims.
Yes.
Were you tempted to go?
Yes.
But
I'd seen one too many episodes of one too many crime shows where that is one of the available resources for clues. Tracking down the attenders. One man taking pictures of the people there to eliminate as potential suspects.
some police department, now they actually came to your house to pick up a handgun.
Sheriff's representative.
Yeah, I remember them talking about that in Mindhunter, the FBI agent, saying that he, you know, was someone that they were looking for, one of the perpetrators. They were like, yeah, you know, this person is, you know, a white male, probably has this background, you know, based on the crime, he'll probably be at the crowd or like at one of these events. Mm-hmm. And it actually ended up helping him catch, you know, one of the people, because in fact he went to, you know, either a news conference or something of that nature. And they were like dead on, like he's going to have the, you know, that draw, that pull to be there and like live through that.
Representatives. One of the detectives was upset because he heard I had a .44 Magnum pistol. and was a convicted man. He came to take the gun away, and it was on he and his sergeant detective. They were staking out the wrong house. It was across the street, and I'm playing around with the car, standing next to the gun in the trunk. They come over and ask me about, excuse me, sir, do you know who lives in this house across the street here? Well, that house was 609 Harriet. You cross back over to this side into 609 Ord, and they were looking for me and didn't even know that, see what I mean? Bad news. Well, at any rate, we walk into the house to have them ask my mother about this other house, and I'm saying, hey, which 609 are you looking for? And they said, are you Ed Kemper? Yes. And it goes on. And I needed to find out what they were looking for, the murder weapon, the .22 automatic, or the .44 Magnum, and I don't want to advertise that I've got a whole bunch of guns. So I made a comment to divine between the two. And I said, yes, quite a little gun, isn't it? And he retorted, a .44 Magnum, I hope so. And I said, whew, okay, because that loaded .22 was under the front seat and guaranteed me an arrest right on the spot. And .44 was in the trunk. I forgot that. I took them in the house, we went into my bedroom, and the closet doors open, and I have a high-powered rifle with a scope on it.
You had some other stuff in the house, too, yes?
Yeah. I had the personal effects and identification of the last two co-eds that had been murdered about 2 months before, right next to the guns in the closet, in a box.
Could he have seen it?
No, but when he arrested me for having all those guns and went through the rest of the closet looking to see if there were any pistols or anything else, he couldn't have helped notice a purse, a book bag, and co-ed ID inside of those belonging to their two latest murder victims. I'd back up and said, oh, excuse me. I just remembered so. And instantly he responds to what I'm saying. My hand moves. Back we go outside, and he's still thinking, boy, this is a really nice and helpful guy here.
Some of these people do what you and I do to become better killers. They practice their trade.
Didn't Kemper stop himself toward the end of his career?
Kemper says he did. He says he could have gone on. He said he had fantasies of killing dozens more people, of leaving a trail of bodies across the country, and at one point he just got on the telephone and turned himself in. He said it was time for the killing to stop. In his case, he said publicly that it was his mother that he was killing all along, and when he killed his mother, that was the end. It's a very deep psychological observation from himself. It may be very accurate.
It was springtime. It was April. And for 2 months I hadn't killed. And I said, it's not going to happen to any more girls. It's got to stay between me and my mother, and I can't get away from her. We're still fighting. She's still belittling me. I'm like a puppet on a string, and I entertain her. She knows all my buttons, and I dance like a puppet with that pain. And it had even gotten physical, to where I had physically grabbed her and thrown her onto her bed, trying to emphasize a point that I was threatening to kill her. So here I pick up these two young ladies in Berkeley on Ashby Avenue. One has flowers in her hand, petite little dolls. They're in granny dresses, and they're hitchhiking, a couple of real experts. I want to see how together I am, if I can resist this temptation.
You going to Walnut Creek? Great.
He's rolling around trying to test his will. I mean, that's just gnarly to think about.
I mean, all the things we've said about him kind of giving, our insight of his personality and how, friendly he can be. He's a real psychopath, man. Like, honestly, like it's hard for me to even wrap my brain around.
It is. It's
someone
terrifying
like
to think that somebody can be that like psychologically disturbed and like that deeply troubled. And the sad thing is, it's like, there's a level of like empathy where you recognize, I mean, we all kind of know that when you see somebody that's like a drug addict, that there's probably this past trauma that they've been through that's led to that. When you see people act out in certain ways, 9 times out of 10, if they're in the, jail system, it's because they had, bad upbringing, lack of parental guidance, some sort of abuse and trauma in their life. And at the same time, it's like terrifying because it's like he's telling the story of the, the chickens, right? And it's like my grandma, had me cut the heads off of chickens. It's something that people have done for centuries.
Yeah, there's
it
no
was definitely
excuse to become a psychopath.
It's definitely something that was traumatic as a young kid for me to have to go grab the chicken, cut its head off. But then to think that something like that could happen, that same event that I went through, it happens to somebody else. And because of these other, mixtures of whatever, it goes into this completely, other place.
Well, like what he said too. He said like he doesn't think that that's the reason why he wanted to do this, but it might have sparked the fascination.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think, like, somebody like that experience that you went through as a kid. Well, you're not a psychopath, and you're not going to one day inquire a fetish to cut heads off and do
that is
disgusting things.
Yeah, one thing that people that they say is that oftentimes there's like, torturing of pets. There's things that they do that show up is like
killing animals. Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer was big into killing animals, and yeah, that's crazy.
And they get in my car. They want to go one way. I know they need to go the other. If they go the way they're insisting on, we're headed right back out to where the first two co-eds were murdered. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, all I got to do is relax, and they'll take me to their death. I've got the gun in the car, the same one I've been doing it with. I insisted. As gently as I could, I took them where they needed to go, to their college. Shit. I looked at her, I said no. I said, good night. And I knew I was going to kill her, And I'm so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly. It hurts. Because I'm not a lizard, I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. See? I came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It was one of our arguments. And I cut off her head, and I humiliated her corpse. I said, there. A 6 young woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
Your grandmother and her daughter-in-law, your mother, were two women very important in your life, and you killed them both. Could you say what they were like that led them to the same fate?
Same thing that kept them from ever being friends. They were both aggressive, matriarchal women. They'd been the daughters of strong matriarchal women. I still loved my mother, and it's hard for somebody to comprehend that you murder your mother.
He said the grandmother as well?
Yeah, and the
crazy
daughter-in-law? What did he say?
Yeah, that was, I think in his mom they were talking about, his grandma and his mom.
Okay.
Mother through love. It isn't a rational process. It's a very painful process. It isn't rational. And I've got to still live with that.
Why did you wind up giving yourself up?
It had to stop. It had to stop. Once my mother was dead, there's almost a cathartic process at that point. I got physically ill right then when she died, when I murdered her. And once she was dead, there was no way I could back out. I had backed down from giving up 1,000 times. I used to get drunk and go sit out in front of the sheriff's department in a parking lot across the street on one of those little concrete parking berms, and I just sit there and say, no, I still can't. The clanging doors, I can still hear them. No, because it'll never open again. So I rationalized that to give up would be insane. To give up would be crazy. I'd be giving away my freedom, and I don't need to. But I look back on that and wish I had earlier when I was saying those things to myself. The people who were later dead wouldn't be. The regret that came later would have not had to be. those people, not things, those people would still be with their families, with their loved ones. They would have their own families. If I had had the courage to make that decision, instead of painting myself into the corner.
Where might you be if you'd never given in to the impulse to murder?
Where might I be? If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, I'd have children, I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
Wow.
Now I remember why I stopped watching stuff like that.
Why?
Because it's just so disturbing. For a
It is
while, I was
dark,
like
yeah.
listening to all these podcasts while I was, because I drive a lot for work for my main gig. And hold on, let me bring this down. Yeah, and I was listening to them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's not good. That's not good for you.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. I mean, it's still interesting. It's something you definitely like. I think it's always weird when people like it's their main hobby to listen to stuff like this. But at the same time, man, it really is super interesting to just like learn about the psyche of all kinds of different people. And for people like this, it's especially interesting because it's like it's so hard to comprehend. It's something that's so foreign to people. And if you've never like learned about these people or anything, like you just look at them as demons, which I mean they are.
They
They're
kind of
evil.
are.
They're evil as hell, but
It's like they're possessed by this, like,
yeah, but it's just crazy, man. I mean, like, I don't know. I am very interested in stuff like this. That was honestly a very good watch. I mean, it was hard to hear some of his stories, but it's just absolutely mind-blowing to see somebody so articulate, somebody so aware of what he's done.
Yeah,
and, like,
introspective and able to
detail.
like really break down like his own thought processes and what led him to do it. And even just like the thing with his mom and with those girls at the end saying that like he knew he was going to do it again and that he was like lashing out against his mother essentially. And that in order to like end that cycle, he had to do that, which is just pure insanity.
Absolutely crazy.
What's tripping me out too is like, man, the FBI agents and police officers who deal with this like on a regular basis, like that mental fortitude, whatever, to be able to like, because you got to think they're dealing with the actual bodies.
Yeah, exactly. The
scene,
photos,
the crime
scenes,
like,
yeah.
Over and over again, day in and day out. And that's like the thing that's crazy, right? So you got this guy that's like walking up the stairs with this bag, past the couple, and he's got the head in it. And then to think about like, there's that, version. And then you have the other version, which is a police officer who's dealing with that and then has to come home to his kids.
Yeah.
And, try to shut down that whole side of what his day was. Hey, honey, how's it going? How was your day? Oh, I had a rough one.
I mean, big shout out to all the men and women out there who are catching these guys, dealing with that stuff on the daily. Cause yeah, it's disturbing, man. I mean, I've listened to some interviews of some, FBI agents who are like deal with like the human trafficking sector and stuff. And some of their, some of the stuff they have to deal with.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
It's heartbreaking. I couldn't
do it
either.
personally.
No, me neither.
So it's like, I wonder about that. I'm like, how long can you do that? And just like the makeup of somebody who is able to do that. 'Cause especially when you talk about like things with like kids, like having to deal with that day in and day out, and then, go home to your family and not have it like impact you or affect you. Like,
and the truth is I guarantee it does impact them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But they know what they're doing has to be done. Because if they're not going to do it,
who is? Somebody has to do that.
And that, to me, that's the real heroes.
Yeah.
But that's crazy, man. Well, guys, that was Edmund Kemper interview in 1984.
What a lovely way to spend our Saturday evening.
Yeah, right.
Seriously, just
dude.
little feel good TV. Yeah.
Insane.
We've been doing all these reactions about like, music and all this other stuff.
And
I don't know.
Comedy.
Yeah. What possessed us to dive into this? I guess, needed to switch it up a little bit.
Well, guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like, subscribe to the channel. If you are watching on Twitch or Kick, make sure that you show some love to our page because we are brand new here. Thank you guys so much for watching today.
Peace.